Hi, my name is Chris Taylor, and next weekend there's going to be a new Magic set release called Gatecrash, and with that is the pre-release. Now, pre-releases are tournaments that Wizard likes to hold at all the game stores to kind of show the cards before they're officially made available for purchase. During those pre-releases, you end up getting 6 packs of cards, you open them all up, you make the best 40 card deck that you can, and you try to beat everybody in the hopes of winning more cards. And today, I'm going to show you how to build one of those sealed decks. When you first go, you get your 6 packs, you have to sit down, you can't open them up right away, so you can't get an edge on anybody else who's there. And you have between 30 minutes and 50 minutes to actually build your sealed deck. So today, I have 6 packs of M13 cards that I'm going to be opening up and build a sealed deck in front of you guys. So, let's take a look at the cards. Okay, now, everybody has their own way of dividing up the cards. The way I usually do it is by color and by type. All the spells go on top, all the creatures go on the bottom. How did I know I was going to get a Planeswalker right away? You also want to be able to set your lands on the side. You don't have to worry about the lands that come in the packs simply because the store in question is going to be able to provide all the lands that you need to make your 40 card deck. Now, limited is the type of format where creatures pretty much make all the difference. So, no matter what kind of cards you get, you want to make sure that you have enough creatures to be able to defend yourself against whoever you're playing against. That was my first blue card. A lot of other people, when they're building their decks, they like to set aside any big bomb cards that they open up and try to build their deck around those cards. Me, I just like to see everything that I get first and then decide from there. Shiny. Right, last pack. Okay. So, once you've opened up all your packs, take a few minutes to actually check out all the creatures and all the spells, and try to find cards that work well together. Things like, in this set there was Exalted, where if you attack with only one creature, all the other creatures that have Exalted will give that creature +1/+1 until the end of the turn. So if you have any kind of creature with evasion or being unblockable, those are the kind of things that you want to be able to combine together to make a deck that would easily be able to go over your opponent's defenses. And the 2 colors that have Exalted are white and black. And I see on top of my black pile, I already have a creature with Exalted and protection from white, so your opponent's white spells won't be able to do anything to him, and you'll be able to block your opponent's white creatures without actually getting damaged. And a Tormented Soul, which can't block and is unblockable. So if you try to build a deck around the Exalted mechanic, you'll be able to use Tormented Souls to pound through your opponent's barriers to damage him more quickly. However, it seems we only have maybe 4. Only 3 creatures with Exalted. What else do we have here? Green has some decent things, but not the Rancor that I was looking for. But 2 Deadly Recluses. Okay. So the way I usually build my sealed decks is that I look at the 2 areas where I have the most creatures, and I try to filter through everything else from those packs and see if I can make something that's worthwhile. Case in point, at the moment, my 2 biggest piles for creatures are green and white. Now, in terms of creatures that I have, Garrick's Pack Leader is going to be good just because it gives you card advantage. Every time you cast something that's big, and green is kind of known for their big creatures, you're going to be drawing cards. So you're going to be able to draw into your big creature for the end or any of your major spells a lot faster than your opponent will because they might not have the kind of draw spells that you have, thanks to that. Only 1, which does not help us very much. However, we also have 2 Elvish Visionaries where when they die, you also draw a card. So there might be something there where we can get some kind of extra card draw. Now, in terms of drawing cards, normally the best colors for that are blue. So right now I'm going to check out my blue cards and see if there's anything big there. And at the moment, just the one, Index. You don't actually get to draw a card out of that, but you do get to see your next 5 card draws and rearrange the cards accordingly based on what you need. If you need more lands, if you need another spell, if you need some kind of removal to deal with your opponent's creatures, Index is going to be able to help you dig through that and see what you can get out of it. Now, out of all the packs that I opened up, I also managed to open up one Ajani Collar of Pride. It's a Planeswalker. Kind of hard to remove without something like an Oblivion Ring or a card that just flat out destroys Planeswalkers, and this set, I know, does not have any of those cards. So that's almost an auto-include at this point, because it's going to make your opponent's life a living hell trying to deal with it. I mean, unless he has a lot more creatures than you do, and then you're kind of screwed. And of my whites, 2 Divine Verdicts and a Pacifism. So we have a little bit of removal there as well. So what do I have in my red? Nothing big. Not enough creatures. Red is usually good for removal just for the burn spells, but I'm not seeing a lot here. First Strike would be nice. Destroying land is good. Nothing all that overwhelming in my red, unfortunately. So, taking a look at what I have in my green and what I have in my white, in terms of creatures, nothing overwhelming, but at the same time, I have a couple of tricks up my sleeve for this. Okay, so after looking through your cards, seeing what creatures you have and what spells that you have that would be able to benefit them most, you can kind of decide what 2 colors that you want to go with. You want to try not to use more than 2 colors for the simple reason that you might not necessarily get the land drops that you need when you have those cards in your hand. You also want to be careful of what your casting costs are. If you take a look at Ajani Collar of Pride, it only costs 1 and 2 white. That means by turn 3 you need to have at least 2 plains or one of the land cards that give you 1 of green or 1 of white, if green and white is the way you're going. And unfortunately, the only land I pulled that was my rare was Hellion Crucible. Very underwhelming card, because you actually have to take your land, sacrifice it after putting a bunch of counters on it, and you only get a 4/4 haste token out of it. Very easily removed. But that black. Black is normally the color with the best removal. And I'm looking at things like Crippling Blight and Murder. Public Execution is okay, but specifically the Murder and Crippling Blight, because especially early on in the game, you're going to have a lot of creatures out that don't have a lot of toughness, so Crippling Blight right there destroys the creature. If it doesn't, if they have just a big creature and you know you can push through for a final attack, that makes it so that their biggest creature can't block anymore. Murder just flats out kills them, as the name implies. But yeah, white-green is the way to go. So, you take the big card that you really want to build your deck around, Ajani Collar of the Pride. Things that might actually help him come out faster, like the Garruk's Pack Leader and the Elvish Visionary. And you also want to see what other cards you can add that would help out with defense. My favorite cards right now are Deadly Recluse. They have Reach and they have Death Touch. As long as they deal any kind of damage whatsoever to any creature, they're dead. It doesn't matter that they only have 1 power. You could be facing a 7/7 beat stick and the thing still dies to a Deadly Recluse. And to top it all off, if you want some things to survive with some combat tricks, I got a couple of Titanic Growths in there as well. Now, some of the things in my creature pile are expensive. For example, Vastwood Gorger, which we need to add just to add a couple of extra creatures, and Duskdale Worm, which is a 7/7 trampler, which will help you punch through with those last bits of damage at the end of the game. But in order to be able to get to 7 mana, even in a small format like Limited, you need a way of getting out your lands faster, or at least making sure that you hit all of your land drops. I didn't get anything all that great, but Ranger's Path is something that would help bring out those lands. It only needs the 1 green, so if you're loaded down with plains, you can pull out 2 more forests, pop it down, and suddenly you can drop a 6-drop on turn 5. We have our green, but what do we have for white? Pacifism and Divine Verdict are auto-includes just because you need a way of dealing with your opponent's creatures in much the same way that you want to be going over those creatures and not getting attacked yourself. Divine Verdict will be able to destroy any target attacking or blocking creature. So if your opponent is attacking, you can just flat out kill it and not have to worry about any repercussions. And Pacifism is going to stop them dead in their tracks because they're not going to be able to attack or block. Rock's Faith Mender would be cool if I was playing with lifelink. Sarah Angel is nice just to have another big creature, plus the Vigilance there is going to help out with being able to stop your opponent's attack from coming in. Warp Clamp Mastiff, I've noticed my deck is actually coming together without a lot of 1-drops, and that one's a first striking 1/1, so it's going to stop your opponent from being able to punch through at least with one of their smaller creatures early on. After that, you just want to add a few other things to make sure that you can survive until you can play that Dustdale Worm or the Ajani Pridemaker. So we have an Avon Squire and an Ajani Sunstriker. The Sunstriker, most of the time new players will look at a card with lifelink or a card that will just flat out give them life and see that as a positive thing. But just gaining life isn't going to help you build towards destroying your opponent. It's just going to help stall them from beating you. So the best idea is to have something like lifelink on a creature that you already want to play, and a 2/2 for 2 is a solid card, just to make sure that you can survive long enough, again, to cast those bigger cards. So, we have some card draw, we have some lifelink, we have a few bigger creatures to be able to survive. In limited events, your deck size is only 40, and on average you want between 16 and 18 lands depending on how big your creatures are so that you have the opportunity to cast those creatures. And you also want to make sure that you don't get mana screwed halfway through the game when you're stuck with all your 5-drops in hand and 2 lands on the field. On the other hand, since there's only 40 cards in your deck and 17 on average is what you have, you're looking only about 23 cards that are spells that you would be able to play in this point. So just give me a sec, I'm going to double check to see how many is in this pile, and we can maybe make adjustments before the tournament starts. 17. So that's only 17. We actually have room for more stuff. Bond Beetle's going to go in. Primal Hunt Beast. Now, a 3/3 for 4 does seem a little bit underpowered considering the other things that you're going to be in there, but its ability, Hexproof, most of the time that's enough to stop their opponents dead in their tracks. You can't have any spells targeted whatsoever by your opponent. So even if it is just a 3/3 beat stick that stays behind for blockers, your opponent's going to be hard-pressed to try to find a way to deal with that creature. On the other hand, there is another 1-drop that as soon as it comes into play, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Now, if that's your first creature in play, you can always put it on that and it becomes a 1/2 for 1. Respectable, but not all that great. I'm thinking more in terms of, if it's your only creature in hand, great. If not, if you have something else in your hand, you can cast that and then cast this later on to pump it up. Maybe on that Warcliffe Mastiff with the 1/1 first strike. That would probably be the one that you want to put a counter on. So, Hunt Beast goes in. Sentinel Spider. It looks a lot like, you know, the Sarah Angel of spiders. It has the same casting cost. You replace the white for green and it's the same number of mana symbols in there. You still get Vigilance, but instead of having flying, you have Reach, so you can block your opponent's flying creatures as well. And one more check of the artifacts. I didn't see anything major. However, anytime you have the opportunity to regenerate a creature with a Ring of Zatharid, there's nothing wrong with that. And your Ring of Colonia, which gives whatever creature is equipped with it trample automatically, will also put a +1/+1 counter on any of those green creatures that you have in there. So maybe one of those spiders with Death Touch that you want to make sure does not die when it's blocking those attackers. So, final count. Let's see if we have the 23 now. 8, 9, 20, 1, 2. And we have 23 cards exactly. Now, I'm a rough estimate kind of guy. A lot of people, when they're playing in these tournaments, they count the mana symbols, they count up all the creatures and lands and make sure that they have like the math figured out for everything so that they're not putting in something or not enough of certain lands. I'm a rough estimate guy, so I'm just going to take a quick peek and see how many of each cards I've got. I see a lot of green mana symbols in there. I'm probably going to want a 9-8 split. 9 forests, 8 plains, just to make sure that all the major things that are in there are going to be castable. There are more green cards than there are white cards, especially when you consider the fact that some of those bigger creatures have 2 green mana symbols in there that you want to have both forests in play to be able to play them. Now, whenever you're in one of these tournaments, it's a best of 3 format, so you'd have an opportunity to see your opponent's deck in the first round, and if you see that you need to add something, especially if it's in one of these 2 colors, you'll have the opportunity to fix up your deck first and foremost before you start up that next round. Depending on the number of people that are at these pre-releases, you'll be able to play, say, between 4 and 6 rounds if it's a smaller store. And depending on your placing, you'll actually be able to win more packs. And since this is a pre-release, you're getting those packs before they even get released in the store, so congratulations. It's important to remember when you go to these pre-releases that when you open up your packs of cards, not to just toss random stuff into your deck. You need to have some kind of goal. And a lot of times it's going to be hard because the cards you're going to get are random, but I think we have a solid game plan here. We have big creatures in the form of Sentinel Spider, Sarah Angel, and Dustdale Worm. We have things like a Ajani Caller of the Pride to be able to deal some of that extra damage with its -3 and add some +1 counters to those creatures. And we have some draw spells like Elva's Visionary and Garrick's Pack Leader to try and get those big creatures out quickly. Socked in a few extra cards in there just for some protection, like the Pacifisms and the Divine Verdicts, just so that when your big creatures actually do come out, you'll have the ability to defeat your opponent before they defeat you. So that is it for my explanation on how to do a sealed deck. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop that down below. If you like this, feel free to share this. I love being able to hear other people's opinions on my videos, and feel free to comment below to see what you'd like to see me do next. Have a good night.